Hello. It is I, Andrine, your Jewish American priestess, and I'm here to provide a full moon Sukkot reading for this upcoming full moon Sukkot. And for those of you who don't know what Sukkot is, you're in for a lovely treat. In the Hebrew calendar, it's a week where we get to build a fort in our yard and eat in it all week long. It happens in the autumn after Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and it's on the 15th of Tishrei and the full moon, so it starts on the night of the 14th, which is to say the night of the 9th of October. And it is a full moon celebration where we spend the entire week dwelling in these fragile booths, which are symbolic of many, many things. And one of the things we do, in addition to building an outdoor fort where we eat, is we shake the Lulav and the Etrog. Now, this is a very ancient practice, and it requires 4 species. Now, 4 species are native to Israel, and we are not in Israel. And as people who are conscious of environment and transportation of goods and such, we no longer in our household import a Lulav and Etrog from Israel. We create our own. Traditionally, the Lulav is made up of a palm frond, a willow, and a myrtle, and the Etrog is it's an Etrog, it's a citron, a very large lemon. So each of these species requires an enormous amount of water to be able to grow. And the Lulav and the Etrog ritual is about calling in the rains for the rainy season that is about to come upon us. So we take these plants and we wave them in the 6 directions. And since we're not in the state of Israel, we are collecting native plants that represent these same plants here in the Pacific Northwest. I've chosen the western red cedar, which is taking the place of my palm frond, the wax myrtle, which is a native myrtle to the Pacific Northwest. This is the Pacific willow. And again, I don't have any citrus plants that grow here, but I do have this beautiful winter pear that comes from the tree across the fence in my yard. So those are my symbolic herbs, the plants that I use for my Lulav and Etrog. And those are bound together. The 3 long plants are bound together into one stack, like so. And then the Etrog, or in this case the pear, is held in the other hand, and there's a ritual that's done with it. And each of these plants represents a different part of the body, a different type of person, etc. And I'll get into those in the readings, because what we're going to do today is we're going to choose one of these 4 plants, and we're going to do 4 readings. So let's start with those of you who would like to choose the western red cedar. You will be reading number 1. And this is gorgeous branch and it's a very healing plant that comes from the Pacific Northwest and is very magical and used for healing in ceremonies with native peoples. And that will be number 1. Number 2 is the Pacific willow, and this is what it looks like. These were all harvested just this night under the almost full moon in the Boise Elliott Native Grove near my home. And we actually planted all of these trees. This is the Pacific willow. Again, this is the wax myrtle. This is going to be number 3, for those of you who want to choose the wax myrtle. And I'll talk about the elements that go with each of these plants when we get into the readings. And then for number 4, we'll have this pear, which represents our etrog-like fruit. So take a minute to choose which one you like. I'll put the timestamps below. And I will see you in your reading. Alright, I'm going to set some of these off to the side. And we'll start with the Western Red Cedar. And Western Red Cedar is, again, representing our palm frond in this manifestation of a Lulav. The palm frond in the traditional Lulav is a straight branch, long branch. A lot of times it's still closed up, like so, when one receives it. And we shake it, and when we do shake it, it sounds like rain, which is an amazing thing when you have a bunch of people together waving their palm fronds. And it is said to represent the spine in the body, and it is said to represent, so it is from the date palm tree, so it is a plant that has taste but no smell. So you can taste a date, but it doesn't have a flower that smells like anything. And that is representing, theoretically, the people who have good deeds but no good prayers. So they say there are 4 types of people: those who have both good deeds and good prayers, those who have good prayers but no good deeds, those who have good deeds but no prayers, and those who have neither. So this particular palm frond, in this case the Western Red Cedar, would represent those people who have good deeds but do not do prayer. And the Western Red Cedar may correspond to that in that it doesn't have a taste, it does have a smell, and it does have a medicinal quality. It is used for healing. So I'm going to go with deeds on this one. So for our reading, we're going to switch places here. We're going to set this cedar branch up here in a place where it's not going to get into the flame. And we'll do our reading right below here. I'm going to have to zoom in a bit to see what letters we choose today. All right. So as we move into this full moon of Sukkot, and this is all about abundance and blessings and the things that are coming for us in this season, in this brand new year, as we come into the harvest, or we finish the harvest of our season, in this month of Tishrei, which is representative of the priestess pathway of the queen, of the Gevira. So all those things kept in mind, I'm going to start by pulling out 3 different Hebrunes. I'm going to start with the central issue. Our central issue today is Samech. And the thing that's come before is Mem. The Hebrune that represents that which will assist us in our current phase is a Chaf. That which will maybe not assist us, or that there may be some fear around, is the letter Kuf. And then what's coming up next is the letter Gimel. Okay. So, I see our central issue here is the letter Samech. And Samech is a circle. It is about circles and cycles. So since we've just come into the new year, 5783, this makes sense. We've just completed a cycle and we've just begun a cycle. Circles are circles. They go around and around. So Samech is a circle. It is a container. It's that which surrounds, Sovev, surrounds something. It's like the presence surrounding all worlds. It is about regeneration and reincarnation and the wheel, which circles and spins and spirals, and about the seasons as they change. And Samech is like a support. It's like a giant hug surrounding you. It also is, in the Paleo Hebrew, it is a thorn, and you can see just the remnant of that on the top, that little tiny spike. But it's a thorn because it surrounds with protection. So, like a rose that has thorns, the Samech has a thorn. It surrounds, but it also has a little bit of an edge to it, a little bit of a spike. And that comes from an ancient practice of planting thorny shrubs around a field in order to protect livestock, or around a home in order to keep predators and bad guys away. So it has that vestigial thorniness to it. It is the number 60 in Gematria, which corresponds to like 60 minutes in an hour, and a circle also has something called 60 minutes. Each of those little ticks on a circle is 60 minutes, and but it has this idea, because it is a circle of equality. Like there is this point in the center that is equidistant from all the other points. So there's a certain amount of equanimity or equality in there. It has to do also with the idea of smicha, which is ordination. It's when someone puts one's hands on another to impart blessing and lineage down from above, from one rabbi, say, to another rabbi, and it's that being surrounded with that energy that comes with imparting blessing and knowledge and authority, I guess, on some level. It has to do with the foundation of agitation. In the book, the Sefer Yetzirah, which is the book of creation, each of the letters is described as having a foundation, and Samech has that foundation of agitation, which is interesting since it is, again, that thorn. So it could be agitation in a positive way, as in like excitement or passion, but it could also be agitation in an irritable way. And that is our central issue right now. It's this idea of being surrounded, being protected, being in that cycle and circle that is the wheel of the year, that is the turning of seasons. And that is where we are right now, having just come into the autumn, having just turned over the new year. And also in some ways, we're in a full moon too, so it does have that moony quality. That is a big circle in the sky, big full moon in the sky. So that is our current issue that we're dealing with. And the thing that came right before that is the Mem. And the Mem is a mother letter. It's one of the three mother letters, which are the creation elements. And Mem being the element of water. It is Mayim Haim, the waters of life. It also is the first letter of the word, of the name Miriam, who is the prophetess who had a magical well that followed her throughout the wilderness in order to help sustain the Israelite people as they wandered in the desert. So we have the mem, and that's come right before. It also represents a womb that is full of water, or gestation. It is the number 40 in Gematria, which corresponds to the 40 weeks of gestation in the human. And so right before now, we've had this time of gestation. We've just come through the high holiday period with Elul, this time of contemplation, Rosh Hashanah, the returning of the new year, and the 10 days of awe, which is a very big gestation period for those who are contemplating what needs to be released and that which needs to be forgiven, releasing vows and letting go of things. And we spend a lot of time contemplating that in those days. And then Yom Kippur itself, which is this very big period of gestation. It's very, very much both like birth and death. The day of Yom Kippur, where we do not eat and we do not participate in life-affirming activities, and yet at the end of it, it seems like it's also a birth as we come back to life. So the mem, having just come before, it makes a huge amount of sense as we've just looked at that whole cycle of high holidays, and now we're in this time period of the turning of the seasons, the cycles, and the shift of the year, and the full moon itself. We've had this time of bathing in that water. And what will help us in the current state that we're in is this letter Chaf. And Chaf is it's a letter that is like a palm of a hand. It is being kind of held out as a gift. It's about giving and receiving. So it has this sort of looks, like a palm, like this. So it's this opening, this reaching out to give what we have to give and receive what we're supposed to receive. It's the palm of a hand or the sole of the foot, and it corresponds to the word Keter, which is crown, but also Koach, which is power. So we have both this idea of kind of sovereignty right now, over this time period, over this full moon, and the sukkah. Of course, the sukkah has got when we build the sukkah outdoors, what we have on the top of it is something called skach, which has two kafs in it. So, and it is this covering that goes over it. It's made up of branches. It's made up of corn stalks or whatever leafy material we have lying around, and it covers over the sukkah in order to provide shade. It provides shade like this, but it allows some sun in it. It allows for to be able to see the stars through it. So that being above right now seems, again, incredibly appropriate. It's like the wings of Shekhinah, which are shading over us. And interestingly, Chaf also rules over the celestial body of the sun. So it's the sun in the sky, but it's also the shade over us to protect us from the sun. So it's both things. And it is about that giving and receiving and the protecting and being being protected. It can be power, but it's also protection. It has to do with the binary foundation of wealth and poverty. So that idea of giving and receiving. So if you're wealthy and you have things to give, absolutely give them. And if you're in need and you have things to receive, please receive them. And don't overgive or don't undergive in order to make yourself seem greater than you are. Give appropriately and receive appropriately as is necessary. And when we do that, we will be protected through those wings that are shading us from the sun above. And what isn't going to help us, or what we may have concerns about, is the kuf. And the kuf is this this letter in the bottom here, and it is the number 100 in Gematria, and so it corresponds to the number of years old that Abraham was when he gave, when his son Isaac was born. So he didn't give birth; Sarah gave birth, but he was the patriarch, and he was 100 years old, which is quite elderly for fathering a child. And Kuf is also the last letter of the word tzaddik. So it has this idea of kind of a finality in righteousness, or somebody who is holy, and a tzaddik who is somebody who's righteous. And a righteous person is somebody who goes down into the earth, not into the physical earth, but onto the earthly plane, like from the heavens. They have this special connection to the heavens, but they reach down into the earthly plane in order to find the divine sparks that have been scattered throughout the world. And kuf is the one letter that goes below the line. So you can see it's got this little lower tail to it, and that is that idea of going down to search for the holy sparks that are in the world. And it also, some say it looks like a resh and a zayin. So it stands for raz, which means secret. So there's something maybe hidden, and so maybe there's some concern about something that's hidden right here, something you're not seeing clearly. Or there's some concern that you do not have the righteousness, that you are not the tzaddik you wish you were, even after all this time of contemplation and going through the high holidays. Maybe you don't have, you're afraid that you do not have what it takes to be, here at this time in the sukkah. And so, if you have those concerns, or if you have those fears, or if you don't really know what's going on because you're afraid there's something that's being hidden, you can bring yourself back up into this chaf, which is this knowledge that you are watched over, that you're protected, that the Shekhinah is guarding you with her wings in the sukkah, that she is like a sukkah for you all the time, not just during Sukkot, but the entire time that you exist here on this plane. And we can dwell in that circle, in that full moon time. And when we get through this period of time, we're moving into the time of Gimel. And Gimel is said to be a foot. It is a foot. You can see that it looks like a little bit of a foot walking away, and it is also the first letter of the word camel, gamal. So it's about persistently walking through a thing. And Gimel is the binary foundation of peace and evil. So as we walk through this full moon time, as we walk through this Sukkot time, as we're dwelling in these booths, one of the things we can walk toward is this idea of peace or wholeness. We have walking forward into the new year, walking ahead in our lives right now as we've made our amends, ideally. And if we haven't, this is the thing about the Jewish calendar, is it gives you these certain deadlines, like you should complete your amends to people, ideally between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and then you complete your amends to the divine on Yom Kippur. But if you haven't, if there's something you've missed, or something you remember, or something that comes up for you afterwards, the gates don't quite all the way close. They say they stay open through Sukkot. So you have this time right now to continue to walk forward. If you want to make tzedakah, if you want to give some kind of funds to some organization, or you need to pay somebody back, if you have a debt that needs to be repaid, this is a good time to do it. Some say that this foot is like a wealthy person running to give charity or tzedakah to the poor. So if you have something you have left to do, this is a good time to do it. In the Sefer Yetzirah, each of the letters rule over a celestial body or constellation of some sort, and Gimel rules over the planet Jupiter. And Jupiter is, in Hebrew, tzedek. So it's again about justice. It's about doing what is right in the world. You have the ability, especially if you're concerned that you haven't done what you need to do. There's still time. There's still time to give tzedakah. There's still time to be a tzaddik, or to do what is right and just, tzedek. And do the thing that will bring peace to you, rather than relying on evil. They say evil, peace and evil. It's like it's reminiscent of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Now that we do know the distinction between what is good and what is evil, we should do what's good. We should do what is whole, what brings wholeness to the world. And that's where things will go as we go through this period of time, through Sukkot, through this full moon time, as we've come through the gestation period and are now in this full moon cycle, sort of this being surrounded. It's usually a family holiday. It's a time where we come together with friends and we invite in, they call them the ushpizin, the ancestors, and even strangers are welcome into the sukkah, so that you can celebrate the harvest together. And we know that we are shaded over by that shach, by that covering that is like the wings of Shekhinah over us. And if we have concerns, again, about not being righteous enough, about having not completed our work as a tzaddik, we can move back up here and know that we're watched over, and know that we're protected and surrounded. Even in times of agitation, even in times of irritability, we have that knowledge that we are watched over, and that we should give and receive as is appropriate. And if we haven't done all the giving we need to give, then we can move forward to do so. We can run to give that tzedakah to whomever needs it, and move toward wholeness, move toward that idea of shalom, which is peace but also wholeness. Know that that tzedek is still possible, even if you haven't done everything that you felt like you should have during the high holidays. So take some time, maybe sit with that and see what comes up for you, and have that straight and narrow, that straight, strong spine, and also the good works that you need to do that will help you feel like you are surrounded by peace, that you can move forward into the new year with your head high, and knowing that you have done all that you can do to get yourself ready for this coming year. So those of you who chose the Western Red Cedar, which is our stand-in for our palm frond this year in our Lulav, that has been your reading, and I wish you a very blessed Sukkot. And I will try to do another reading this week sometime, maybe from the Sukkah this time. We'll see if I can make that happen. Shavua Tov. Hello, for those of you who chose the willow, which in this case is a Pacific willow, native willow. This plant is said to represent the mouth in the body. So it's about speaking, and speaking true, and also speaking, honestly. It is said to represent. So each of the plants has something to do with taste or smell, and works or prayer. And each of the plants either has taste and smell, or neither taste nor smell, or one or the other. And the willow is the one that has neither taste nor smell. There are no flowers, there's no fruit of the willow that we eat. There's absolutely some kind of flower that the insects eat, but in the understanding of in the Lulav, the willow is said to have neither taste nor smell. And it's said also that there are 4 types of people in the world: those who have works and prayer, and those who have works but no prayer, and those who have prayer but no works, and those who have neither works nor prayer. And the willow is the one that represents, because it has neither taste nor smell, represents those who have neither works nor prayer. So maybe those who are not particularly strong believers in anything, spiritual. But it's still an important part of our landscape. It is an important plant in our world, and we include it because there are all kinds of people in the world. So for those of you who chose the willow, and again, it represents the mouth in the body, this is your reading for today. I'm going to set this back here, and hopefully in a place where we can still see it while I do the reading. We're going to start by pulling out the first Hebrune is going to be representative of what is happening right now in this time period, in this harvest time, as we are preparing ourselves to celebrate all the things that we've harvested from, the earth, and from this season, from all of these celebrations that we just had. So this central issue is going to be represented by the Hebrune Zayin. Set that right there. Okay. And then next one I'm going to pull out is for what came just before this time. What came up right before Sukkot in the recent past for you. I have the letter Nun. Great. Next I'm going to pull out a Hebrune which is going to represent that which is going to be maybe something that we need to call in, or is positive for us right now. I'm going to put that right above, and that letter is the letter Tet. And then I'm going to pull out a letter that represents that which is maybe something we need to release, or that we have some concerns about. Let's say it's a challenge right now in our life. And that will go below, and that one is the Ein Sof, the blank Hebrune. And then we'll choose one that goes of what's going to be coming up next for you in this upcoming season, either in the very near future or in the slightly distant future. And that letter is the letter Hey. All right. The first letter we're looking at is the letter Zayin. And Zayin is this letter, and it looks like this. It represents a sword or a scepter. So it has to do with sovereignty. It has to do with power. There's a certain amount of power that is affiliated with Zayin. Zayin is the number 7. It's the 7th letter of the Hebrew alphabet, so it corresponds to a completion. The 7 days of creation is that 7 days in a week. It is a completion number, and it is also a magical number. There's so many cycles of 7 in Judaism and in the Torah. There's of course the 7 days of creation. The Shemitah year, which we just finished, is a cycle of 7 years. There are, of course, the Jubilee year, which is 7 times 7, and then, interestingly, also the 7 Ushpizin, who we invite into the Sukkah. So each night of Sukkot is a 7-day cycle. It starts on Sunday night and it goes for 7 nights. 8, I guess, sometimes in the diaspora, but 7 traditionally. And there is a different ancestor that we invite into the sukkah each night with us, sort of as a spiritual guest. And those 7 are Avraham, that's Abraham, Yitzhak, Isaac, Yaakov, Jacob, Moshe, that's Moses, Aharon, Aaron, David, King David, and Joseph. So those are our 7 male Ushpizin. There are also female ancestors who we invite in. I do not have the list of their names right now, but we can also invite in our own ancestors, our own benevolent, loving, wise, and kind ancestors to visit us in the sukkah during this holiday season. So this is up right now because here we are at Sukkot. Zayin also represents the Shabbat bride, so someone who, that feminine aspect of a relationship. It could be any kind of relationship, but specifically Shabbat, the Shabbat bride is said to come in on Shabbat every week. And it's got that little kind of crown on top of a vav here, which represents the feminine energy coming in kind of to mitigate that masculine energy, if you're into binaries at all. So Zayin represents that those cycles of 7. You know, they're in the wedding ceremony, the bride circles the groom 7 times, and on the last day of Sukkot, we take our lulavs and our etrogs, I suppose, and we march around 7 times. We march around 7 times, and then we beat them on the ground to kind of mimic the sound of rain. So that is one of the rituals that we do during this time, these water rituals, to try to call in the rain for this coming season of winter in this northern hemisphere. And Zayin is what's up right now. That's what's happening. We've got the 7 Ushpizin, we've got the cycles of 7 that going around 7 times, and this completion cycle, having just finished the year, having just finished the week, and going into a new week. We're coming into our power right now. And that's what's up for you right at this time. And what's come right before that is the letter Nun. And Nun is, here it is, this letter. And you can see that it looks sort of like somebody bowing forward. They say it's like somebody who is both bending their knee and bowing. So it's a representative of a very humble servant, a very subservient person, a neman, somebody who embodies humbleness or humility, and a faithful servant, someone who is, constantly there and ready to serve. So perhaps that's something that you have embodied recently in the past here, that you've been humbled, having come through the high holidays. Perhaps some of your experiences were humbling, standing before the presence of the divine or in the company of other people who are all confessing, the misdeeds of the past year. Maybe you found something that was humbling for you. Just again, being in the presence of divinity during these quite awesome holy days. And Nun is the number 50 in Gematria. As we were talking about the Jubilee year, which is 7 times 7, 49, Nun would represent the Jubilee, the 50th year. And the 50th year of the Jubilee is a time where not only do you let your land rest, but you free all of your slaves. You forgive every single one of your debts. So it's this idea of freedom and humility together, that redemption. And all land then goes back to its previous owner during the Jubilee year as well, so that none of the tribes lose land that they may have rented out or sold even to another entity. So there's a lot of power and strength in this humbleness. It rules over the constellation Scorpio in the sky, in the celestial bodies, and the stomach in the body, and the foundation of locomotion, which is moving forward consistently and powerfully in a humble way. So that's come right before now, and again, maybe that has to do with what you've experienced in the high holidays, having been humbled by it, or finding yourself brought low perhaps for a period of time so that you can be raised up back into your power here. And what's going to help us right now in this time period is the letter Tet. The letter Tet is up here. It is a container, like a vessel. It's some kind of either basket or a cup. It's something that can hold something, and it's sometimes seen as a womb. It has this connotation in part because it is the number 9 in Gematria, which represents the 9 months of gestation in the human. And so you have this idea of a vessel, and it's holding something good. Tet is the first letter of the word Tov. Tov, which means good, and it hides goodness within it, they say. So there's something that is good, and there's some kind of gestation period, some kind of knowing that you have something good within you, that you are that vessel, that you are holding goodness, the goodness of the divine, and this idea of renewal, having again just come through the high holidays. We had these shofar blasts that were like sets of 9, and so it has to do with renewal as well. So that is what is going to help us right now, is this remembering that we are full of goodness, that we are vessels that are filled with the goodness of the divine right now as we are in this powerful time. Remember our goodness within. And what isn't going to help us right now is we just have blankness. And maybe there's a certain amount of fear. Again, it's a challenge here, maybe that we don't really know what's going to happen. Like, do we ever really know what's going to happen? So we have this this blank, maybe this empty feeling, you know, having come through high holidays, maybe having been brought low, been humbled by that. Maybe there's this feeling of maybe post-holiday letdown, or just the feeling of that one gets when one realizes that we're, you know, just specks in a vast, infinite void. That can feel really overwhelming sometimes to get a sense of one's place in the vastness of the universe, the vastness of creation. And for me, the blank Hebrune, which is the Ein Sof, that infinity, also represents that the primordial material out of which everything is made, the tohu vavohu, the blankness, again, the stuff that out of which everything is made. And again, it can be very overwhelming to find yourself face to face, staring into the abyss, staring into the void, and it can be frightening. So if you find yourself frightened by that, know that you are full of goodness, that this stuff is the stuff out of which we are all made. So everything, all of our humility, all of our power, all of our gestation, all of our goodness is made out of this raw material, which is divinity. So if you find yourself being frightened by that, you know, that vastness, bring yourself back up to knowing that you are a container full of the goodness that exists in the world, and that you can stand in your power now. And what is coming next, as we get through this period of time during Sukkot, when we're coming back into our power from our humility, is the letter He, and He is it is the letter that represents presence, like just being present, being maybe the presence of the divine, the Shekhinah, the indwelling presence. It has to do with unity and completeness. It is the first letter of the word Hineni, which means here I am, basically ready for service, ready to do. This is the answer that traditionally folks in the Torah will say when divine calls them. They say Abraham, Abraham, and Abraham says Hineni. Hagar says Hineni. She's one of the few female characters who has direct conversations with the divine. Just that present. I am here, I am present, I am ready. And it is 2 of 4 of the letters of the divine name. So we have Yud, He, Vav, and He. So it's like Yud is that spark of the divinity, and then presence, and then connection, and then presence. So it is 2 sets of presences within the divine name. So it is very, very strongly related to divinity. Havaya, which is one of the permutations of the divine name, meaning presence, meaning becoming, being that existence, and all of the most of the tenses of to be, Haya, Hoveh, and Yehiyeh all have a He in them, and so being present, being effective, I think, in the presence of the divine, or using the divine presence to be effective in one's life, is represented by the He. It is the number 5 in Gematria, so it has to do with the 5 fingers, which brings us to, kind of being able to manipulate things in our life for the good, ideally being able to be dexterous in our work. And it has to do with the foundation of sight in the Sefer Yetzirah. He is associated with sight and vision, so it has to do with light and sight, and it corresponds to the liver in the body, and the liver is one of the heaviest organs. It is the heaviest of the organs, if you don't count, I guess, the skin, and the word for liver in Hebrew is keved, and it is the same root as the word kavod, which means glory and honor and gravitas. Again, what one might feel in the presence of the divine. So that's what's coming up in the future, this idea of finding your place in the presence, being present with divinity, having the divine presence within you. And as we've come out of this time of humility, being humbled possibly through the days of awe, into this time period of power, where we're stepping into power and sovereignty and feeling maybe the power and sovereignty of the divine, know that we are full of goodness, that we have that tov, we have that container that is good, and we are that container that is good. If we find ourselves being alarmed or concerned about the infinite and how vast and wide and how small we feel in it, we can move ourselves back up to knowing that we are a container for that stuff, that primordial material out of which all things are made. And that'll bring us back through our power into this time of presence, with the divine presence, with the divine power. And if you have some concerns about not having either prayer or works in your world, you know that you can just rest assured that you are full of goodness, that the divine stuff is everywhere in you, that you have that power, and that you can stand in the presence of the divine now and in the near future. So for those of you who chose the Willow, I wish you a marvelous Sukkot. I hope you have the ability to build a sukkah or visit a sukkah wherever you are, and celebrate with your friends and family, and have a wonderful time. And I will see you hopefully in the middle of Sukkot, possibly from the sukkah itself, and have a wonderful week. Shavua Tov. Okay, for those of you who chose the wax myrtle, this is a little different than the myrtle of the Middle East, but this is what we have in the Pacific Northwest. And the myrtle is, typically it has a flower. I'm not sure that our wax myrtle has the same kind of flower. It certainly doesn't have the same kind of flower as a regular myrtle. But because of that, in the symbolism that goes with the variety of plants in our Lulav, the myrtle represents that which has smell but no taste, because it has a flower but it doesn't really have a fruit that we eat. So that being the case, it represents the type of person who might have prayers but maybe does not have deeds in the world, so doesn't do good works. It represents the shape of the myrtle leaf is said to look like an eye. So it represents the eye in the body, and the kind of person who, again, does prayer but doesn't actually have any work in the world. And that, again, not to say that one can't, but they say there are 4 types of people. There's a lot of that goes on in our tradition, that there are 4 types of children and there are 4 types of people. This person is said to have prayers but no works. And that's not to say that that's bad. I mean, if somebody needs to pray, there are some that have work and no prayer, and that's also maybe not complete and fulfilling. But if everybody does their part, then everything gets done, in my estimation. So here we have this myrtle branch, and it goes into our Lulav, and it again represents the eye, so that one might see more clearly and do what is right based on their appropriate vision. I'm going to set that right here. I'm going to pull out some Hebrunes for your reading today. The first one I'm going to pull out is about what's going on right now, this central situation that is coming up right now as we're moving into this harvest time, the celebration time of having just completed harvesting what we've gotten out of our high holidays, and maybe harvesting our garden as we move into the autumn season. So that first letter coming out for you today is the letter Bet. Right there. And the next letter I'm going to pull out has to do with what has come just before now. What was it that just happened that has informed us and brought us into the present time? And the letter that's coming out for that is the letter Gimel. Next, we're going to pull out a letter that has to do with what we're going to call in right now in this present time. What is it we're calling in to assist us through this period? And what we have is the letter Taf. And what is it that is a challenge right now, maybe of concern or something that we need to release in some way? And that letter is the letter Tet. Okay. And then the future, what's coming up in the near future here as we move forward into this new year strongly, is the letter Lamed. Okay. So our central issue is the letter Bet, and Bet is said to represent the house, the home. In the Paleo Hebrew, it looks like a little bit of a spiral floor plan of a house. It is the second letter in the alphabet, and it can talk about any kind of structure. It tends to be a house. but it can be a building in which anyone works or lives or studies or entertains. It could be a tabernacle or a temple or a tent. Or it could be a sukkah. As we're coming into Sukkot, maybe this is our sukkah where we're dwelling for the next 7 days or so. Some people eat in the sukkah every meal, and some people actually sleep in the sukkah. The rules around Sukkot have to do with celebrating and being joyful. So it is said if it starts to rain and you're out in the sukkah and you are miserable, then you should not be out there. You need to go inside. You're not supposed to be unhappy when you're in your sukkah. If you're having a great time and it's raining, then knock yourself out. Stay out there. But if you choose to sleep in the sukkah, it is said you're not supposed to sleep under the bed. So if it's too cold or you're unhappy out there and you're trying to get away from the rain, then you should really just go inside the house, because Sukkot is supposed to be a joyful time. It is one of the most joyful times in the entire year. It's one of my very favorite holidays, and my kids too also have always enjoyed it. Even though they're in their 30s now, they're all like, we get to build a fort in the yard again. This is great. So this bait could be representing our sukkah right now, since that's our dwelling place for the next week. It can also represent just the body, right? Because that's where our soul lives. That's where we live. We live in our bodies right now. We are not our bodies. Our bodies are certainly part of us. And but we live inside our bodies, and eventually we leave them. So maybe it's about our bodies, where we are right now physically, and where we are dwelling, and how fragile they are. I mean, the sukkah represents that fragility. It's a temporary structure that's very rickety in its way. It's not going to withstand a major storm. It's certainly not going to hold up over the winter. And it's supposed to be a temporary dwelling place, just like our bodies are temporary dwelling places for us. So that's what's up right now. It represents, it rules over the time, in time, it rules over the day of Shabbat, which just passed. But we have a Shabbat, absolutely, coming up in Sukkot. Also, Sukkot is sort of a Shabbat of sorts. I mean, it's not Shabbat like Yom Kippur is Shabbaton. It's not like the resting time of all resting times, but it is a kind of, it's a celebratory, I would say, playtime. We celebrate for that entire week, even though we may be working on some of the days and doing other menial tasks. It's this different time. It's this time of joy. So in some ways, it is a Shabbat of sorts in my estimation. So the bait ruling over the time of Shabbat seems appropriate. In the body soul, bait represents the mouth, whereas Myrtle represents the eye. Your mouth is also coming up here somehow. Maybe you have something you need to say, or maybe it's just you're eating in your sukkah. You're having your meals outdoors, and that's a lovely time. It is the foundation binary of life and death, and we've been exhorted recently in our Torah readings to choose life. And Sukkot is one of those times where we do choose life. We choose life by celebrating. It's a very definitive life choice to celebrate. So that's up right now as well. Yeah, I think that is kind of concisely what's going on here. We have this temporary structure that is both the sukkah and our bodies, and we're going to eat some delicious food, and we're going to celebrate, choose life, and rest in some kind of celebratory way with the bait as a central issue. The thing that's come right before that is Gimel, and Gimel is this letter that is a foot. It is the first letter of the word Gamal, which is camel, and it is about movement. It's about movement forward, about progress, doing good deeds, and walking ahead in our life. So we've just come out of the 10 days of awe and Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and maybe we did something good. Maybe we moved forward during that period of time. Maybe we did some amends that we needed to do, and that helped us to move forward in our lives and our relationships. And we've done that now, and it's brought us to where we are in the time. Gimel is said to rule over the heavenly body of Jupiter, which in Hebrew is Cedar, which means justice. So maybe we've done some just deeds or done something that has brought justice about in our life or in somebody else's life, again, coming out of the high holidays. So having just finished that period of time where we did some good things, where we walked forward, we ran to do good, and did maybe some tzedakah or justice in some way, and it's brought us to this time right now where we are. Gimel represents the foundation binary of peace and evil. So being discerning between what is wholeness, what brings about wholeness, and what does not bring about wholeness, has brought us to where we are. So that's what's come right before. This idea of forward progress, forward movement, has brought us to this time of Beit. And what's going to help us right now in our current fragile home state of being in our house, being in our body, and celebrating our time of rest, is the letter Tav. And Tav is the last letter of the Hebrew alphabet. It is a sign, like a signature, a stamp or a seal that is sort of a chop, if you will, at the end of a great work. Somebody might sign their name, and the divine has signed their name Tav. That is that last letter. It is the final letter of the word emet, which means truth, and it is also said to be like a dalet and a nun, which would represent din, meaning judgment, or judgment. And so there's some final judgment, maybe like death. I mean, we've got Yom Kippur, which is like a rehearsal for death in some ways. But we know that we've got this completion, whatever it is, some kind of completion has come to end, and that's going to help us get through this time. It is one of the double letters that represents the binary foundation of sovereignty and slavery. So what's going to help us now is to call in our sovereignty and release our slavery, release being enslaved to that which has come before. It is rules over the moon in the celestial bodies, and we've got the full moon happening right now. So anytime that we are having some challenges in our fragility in our bodies, we can look up at the moon, know that that the divine has made a stamp and a seal on creation, and that we are part of that, and that we can claim our sovereignty in that we have been given the judgment and of being allowed to be here for now. We've made it through Yom Kippur. We've made it through that time of judgment where we stood before the throne of the divine and confessed our sins and made our amends, and we're still here. If you're listening to this, you are still here. So hold firm. Look up at the moon. Understand that everything comes in cycles, and that the full moon is here full right now, and it will wane, and then it will wax again. These cycles come and they go. So hold on to that. Hold on to your own sovereignty right now as we go through this period of time. And what won't help us, or maybe a concern or a challenge right now, is the letter Tet. And the letter Tet is the letter that represents a vessel of some sort. It's a cup or a basket of some sort. It is a container. And it contains something that is good. It is the first letter of the word tov, which means good. It could have to do with gestation, like a womb. It is the number 9, so it does correspond to the 9 months of pregnancy in the human. So, and it does have to do with renewal, let's say, being born, having something new, maybe just having come out of Rosh Hashanah, where we had those 9 sets of 9 of the shofar blasts that remind us about being woken up and being reborn through this new year. But because it's on the lower line here, it may represent something that you're concerned about or fearful of. Maybe you're afraid that you are not full of goodness. Maybe you're afraid that you don't have anything to gestate, that you are barren in some way. But you don't need to be concerned about that, because we do have the knowledge that this universe has been sealed, that we have been sealed for a new life, that we've been judged righteous and worthy because we're still here. So that goodness that we are concerned that we may not have, that we are maybe an empty vessel, we don't have to be worried about that, because we can just move ourselves right back up to the knowledge, look up at the moon and know that we are here because we have been deemed worthy to be here. So if you have any concerns about that, about not being able to gestate, about not being good enough, then again, move yourself back up to the top. Know that there's been a completion, that you have made the cut, and that you have the sovereignty to exist here in this time and in this place, in this house that is your body right now. And as we move through this period of time in our houses, in our bodies, in our fragile structures, we move into the future, which is the Lamed. And the Lamed is the one letter that reaches above the line. It is that which is reaching up for connection with the divine. And it is the first letter of the word Lev, which means heart. So moving forward into your heart space, it's about teaching, and it's about learning, and it's about exploring the soul through prayer and meditation. It's about understanding, and it is the letter that corresponds to this month, the month of Tishrei, which is where we are right now, in this time, in the middle, smack in the middle, the 15th of Tishrei, in our Sukkot time. And it also corresponds to action in the foundations. So we're about to move forward into this period of action and activity, into the new year, with heart, with our deep, high aspiring heart, this longing for elevation, this longing to connect to Yah, by both learning and by teaching, perhaps, if that's appropriate. Absolutely through prayer and meditation. It is said that those who are like the Myrtle have prayer. Maybe they don't have deeds, but they have prayer, and prayer is an important thing. Prayer and meditation are very important, and love comes with the heart comes with that longing, and the Lamed comes with that foundation of action. So action may be in your future, maybe that's the part that you've been missing right now, and it's time to move forward into that. Those of you who chose the Myrtle, you've got this love, you've got the heart for it, and maybe you've learned something through this period of time that you've been praying. Maybe you've learned that now is the time to move forward into action, because we had this moving forward here as we went through the high holidays with the Gimel, maybe with humility, maybe with tzedakah, maybe doing some kind of acts of justice. And now we're in this period of time of dwelling, just being in the house, being in that sukkah, being in your body, being in that fragile place that is temporary, but is still a home, and maybe a house of learning, and maybe a place of celebration. Absolutely a place of celebration, a time to rest from many of our duties after the harvest, and celebrate together in the house, in the bait. And we have the full moon above. We have the stamp and the seal that we have been judged righteous and worthy to be here right now, that we can own our sovereignty in this time period and not be concerned about whether we are good enough, whether we have the goodness within us, because we do. Of course we do. If we didn't, we wouldn't be here now. We have that stamp of approval. We have that seal. We have been sealed in the book of life for now, in this fragile time, in this fragile body. And we move forward into action, into Tishrei, to the rest of Tishrei with heart, with this high aspiration for learning and teaching and love. And for those of you who chose the wax myrtle today, with your wonderful prayers and meditations and moving forward into your idea of action, this has been your reading. I wish you a beautiful Sukkot. It's going to be gorgeous here. I hope you have a wonderful time of resting and celebrating within the Sukkah. And I wish you a Shavua Tov. I'll try to do another reading this week, possibly out in the Sukkah. So I will see you then. All right, for those of you who chose the pseudo Etrog, we have this pear that came off the tree in the yard, and it's approximately the same shape as an Etrog and similar color to the Etrog, and it has that stem on it like the pitone on an Etrog. So I'm hoping that this will be sufficient for us to represent the Etrog today and in our Sukkot celebration with our Lulav and Etrog shaking. So each of the 4 species represents a different body part, and it represents a different type of person. And the Etrog itself represents the heart in the body. So we have the spine and the eye and the mouth in the other 3 plants, and now we have the heart. And some say it also represents the womb in the body. And each of the species is said to represent a different kind of person, having to do with how they perform their works and how they perform their prayers and meditations. And the Etrog itself, it has both a smell and a taste. And some of the other plants only have smell or only have taste or have neither. But this has both. And so it is said to represent those type of people who have both good prayers and good deeds, or prayers and deeds. So some have prayers but no deeds, and some have deeds but no prayers, and some have neither deeds nor prayers. And this one has both. So it is said to represent the person who has both deeds and prayers. And again, represents the heart or the womb in the body. And so for those of you who chose the Etrog symbolically, here is your reading for this upcoming Sukkot as we go into this time of the harvest completion, celebrating all that has come, all that we have reaped from our harvest through the high holidays and possibly from our gardens, although some of us who observe the Shemitah don't have much to reap, although I've got figs and plums and pears, so that's something for sure. Very much enjoying So the central issue coming up for you today, Etrog people, is the letter Kuf. I'm going to set that right there. Sorry, Chaf, not Kuf. Still get those names mixed up. So we have the letter Kaf, and then what came right before this time is the letter Aleph. And what is the thing we are calling in right now in this period of time during Sukkot is our letter Chet. And that which is a challenge for us right now, we have the letter Pei. And then what's coming up in the near future is the letter Tzadi. Wonderful. All right. So our central issue is the letter Chaf. And Chaf is the letter that represents, it's like a palm of the hand. It's supposed to be having its the palm reaching out. And that can be either reaching out to give or to receive. Chaf is the binary foundation of wealth and poverty. So it can be either somebody who is wealthy, who is giving, or somebody who is possibly impoverished or in need, receiving. And it's about the balance of those two things, about giving what is appropriate to give and receiving when it is appropriate to receive. So if you're in a position where you are in need, it is always appropriate to receive help and assistance and blessings. And if you are in a position where you have the privilege and the ability to give, then giving is the appropriate thing for you. So that's what's up right now. It's about power. It's about koach and keter, which means crown. It's about having some power. The power to choose, the power to give, and the power to receive. Sometimes that's challenging for people. And it also has to do with the sukkah. Interestingly, we have the sukkah where we're building this dwelling outdoors right now, and what we put on the top of it is a bunch of plants that are called skach, and it has two chafs in it. And it is, so we have a roof on top of our sukkah, and on top of that we put leaves and various things that shade us, but they also let in a little bit of sun and a little bit of, you're supposed to be able to see the stars through the roof, through the shach. So I love that this came up in this reading, because it allows us to think about the sukkah and what it means and what it represents. And in fact, that shach, the skach, which is on top of the sukkah, represents like the palms of the divine, shading us. It's like the wings of Shekhinah shading over us and protecting us from the sun. And interestingly, Chaf also rules over the celestial body of the sun in the sky. So each of the letters rules over one of the celestial bodies or constellations, and Chaf is the one that rules over the sun. So it both represents the sun and that which shades us from the sun in order to protect us. So it's got both that idea of power, of the source power, as well as that which gives us some mitigation against it, so we don't get burned. It is like the wings of the Shekhinah, and so it has to do with Sukkot very specifically. it yeah, so it has to do with again, giving and receiving. It could also have to do with suppression of somebody, because you could do that also with the palm of your hand, or step on somebody with the sole of your foot. But I think in this situation where we are right now in time, it's more about the sukkah. It's more about being protected by that shading that comes by the schach over us, or by the wings of Shekhinah as she shields us from the bright power of the sun. And that's what's happening for us right now. And again, that binary of giving and receiving, of wealth and poverty, of knowing where we are to be and exist right now, having just come through the high holidays, finding that balance between giving and receiving, and what is appropriate to give and what is appropriate to receive, and being open to both of those things at the same time. And what's come right before that is the letter Aleph, and Aleph is the first letter of the alphabet. It is the number 1, and it represents oneness. It represents the unification of all. It represents the divine. It is the letter that begins most of the names of the divine, including Adonai and El, and so many different names. And you can see that it has a small yud on the top and a vav in the between and another yud below. So it represents the connection and the division between heaven and earth. It has these paradoxes of both connection and division, as well as the paradox of unity and multiplicity. Because the Aleph is, if you have different vowels with it, could be spelled Aleph, which means 1,000, which is one, with 3 zeros after it. So it's this multiplicity of the allness and the oneness at the same time. It is also representative of the divine above and the human below, and again, that connection and division between heaven and earth, between the divine and the human. And it is about unity and oneness in the world. It has to do with creation and the infinity of all things, again, and the oneness of all things. And it is the first mother letter, so it represents breath. It represents air, and basically the atmosphere in the world, and breath in the body, the chest in the body, physically. So it has to do, it balances the other 2 mother letters, which are water and fire. So it's that middle place between the fire in the sky above, and the sun and the stars and the moon, and the waters below, neither of which place we can live. We have to live in this middle place where the air is, where we can breathe. But it has to do with that temperate season, in time between the hot time and the cold time. So some say it is spring, but I think it can also be seen as fall. Like we have this time between the heat of the summer and the cold of the winter, and that's happening right now as well. I think of Aleph as also representative of that temperate season, both on both ends, both spring and fall. It is this middle place, this Goldilocks zone where we can exist, and that oneness. So we've just come through the time of connection, a real strong connection with the divine through the high holidays, as we've gone through Rosh Hashanah, and then with Yom Kippur, where we stand right in the presence of the divine, and we confess all the sins that we may have, all the shortcomings that we have remembered throughout the year, and found that connection with the oneness. And as we've come through that time of that both unity and multiplicity, of that both being connected with and separated from the one and the divinity. And now we're in this time of Sukkot, where we are knowing that we are watched over by and shaded by the Shekhinah presence, indwelling presence. And what's going to assist us right now, the thing that we are working to call in right now in the time, is the letter Chet. That is this letter. And you can see that it looks a little bit like a sukkah. It's got the two walls and the roof over it. It looks like a sukkah. It's also like a chuppah, which is also a kind of sukkah. It's a temporary dwelling place that is fragile, and where we dwell in it for a minute when we are being wed, when we're being bound to someone else. And so it's got this this temporary fragile dwelling place vibe to it with the chet, and it represents that connection, that marriage of souls between the divine and the human, and between two humans, maybe more, in partnership. It is the number 8 in Gematria. It is the 8th day of creation, which is the infinity that happens after the 7th day. Everything after 7 is infinity, and it has to do with that. Also, the 8th day after the birth, there's the Brit Milah, where frequently known as a circumcision, but it is not always. Sometimes it's a naming ceremony, where there is this covenant that happens between the divine and a new life. And it has to do with the foundation of speech in our foundation naming within the Sefer Yetzirah. So it has to do with the infinite, it has to do with the chuppah, the connection, and it also is the first letter of the word chai, which just means life. It's about choosing life and celebrating life, as we're doing right now in the Sukkot, during Sukkot, in the Sukkah, under the chuppah, all the places that we celebrate life. And so that's the thing that we're calling in right now, all this idea of celebration and connection and unity with the divine and with people as well. And what we're releasing right now, or what may be a challenge for us right now, is the letter Pei. And Pei is the letter that represents the mouth. It means mouth. But it's also the number 80, so it's 8 times 10, so it's this ultimate manifestation of the infinite. So, and we have to do with communication. Maybe we're having some challenges with communication and speech. This was also the foundation of speech. So, interestingly, we have this this dichotomy between what we're calling in and what we're having challenges with, and they are similar, if not the same. This is said to be the mouth of the divine, speaking the world into existence. In that that's how the world was created, through words, through letters, and the Pei looks like that mouth, but inside you could see that the letter Beit could exist. Beit being the first letter of the Torah in the word Bereshit, in the beginning. So it is speech that we are possibly concerned with or having a challenge with, and what we need to do if we find ourselves having a hard time with the speech, or with this idea of the infinite, the idea of being a small speck in the grand infinite that exists out there, the very grand infinite, is we need to bring ourselves right back up to this idea of connection and covenant, that we know we've made a connection, that the divine has made a covenant with us, and that we are protected by that skach, by the divine, and that we are one, and we have already experienced that oneness in the recent past. So if we have concerns with communication, or having difficulty maybe making those prayers or petitions, or even with other people in our lives, know that we're protected. Know that we are within covenant, that we have made a contract, and that we're celebrating right now all about that contract. And when we get through that period of time, where it's going to bring us to is Tzadi. And Tzadi is about justice. It's about righteousness. It's the first letter of the word Tzadik. It is the number 90. And it is about like a bent nun and a yud on its back. So it's somebody who's incredibly humble but carries the divine with them wherever they go. And we will become this person if we are not already being able to claim our tzaddik-tude. We know that that's coming up in the future as we move through this time of protection and celebration, that we will have the potential to become the tzaddik. And the tzaddik is somebody who hunts for those divine sparks in the world. It is the number 90, as I said, which is the number of years old that Sarah was when Yitzhak was born, which is quite elderly for a mother. And yet that miracle happened for her. And Yitzhak has the tzadi in it, and it represents the fact that every child can be a tzaddik, or maybe already is a tzaddik. And you too can also be that tzaddik if you don't doubt yourself too much. It has the foundation of thought. So you have the opportunity for more contemplation in the near future. You have the opportunity to move into your righteousness, into your holy place with the divine coming up soon. So for those of you who chose the Etrog today, this pair representing the Etrog, we've got the Chaf, allowing you to receive what needs to be received and give what you need to give, and dwell in the sukkah underneath the schach that the Shekhinah has provided for you, that both the one that you have built perhaps in your home or near your home or that have visited, and also that divine schach that is above you at all times, whether you can see it or not, the wings of Shekhinah, that both gives you the sun as a source of life and protects you from that burning of the sun. Having just come through the high holidays and that oneness, that unity that we all experience as we stand in the presence of the divine, we are now celebrating within the sukkah and under the chuppah in a way, in that sukkah-like chuppah, or the chuppah-like sukkah, where we are protected, and we know that the infinite is here with us, and that we can choose life and celebrate life in these ways with our covenant, with our contract that we have made with the divine. And if we find ourselves being overwhelmed by the infinite, or having difficulty speaking the things that we need to speak, we can move right back up here with the knowledge that we are under contract, that we have been given that that covenant with the divine, and that we are protected with the chuppah over us. And then we move forward into our righteousness, into our knowledge that we have the ability to be a tzaddik, that we have the responsibility to be a tzaddik, and that we are humble enough to go forth into the world as a tzaddik. So for those of you who chose the Ersatz, Etrog, that is this pair, I wish you a beautiful Sukkot, and I wish you a wonderful holiday, and I will probably see you sometime in the middle of Sukkot, possibly from the Sukkah, and I wish you a beautiful Shavua Tov. We'll see you next time.